Hi, everybody, and welcome back to the Just Make It Pretty podcast. Today, we are talking about everything that happens beyond the click. So that means attribution, branding, and buyer trust in the home building industry. We're diving into one of the biggest challenges that we see in home builder marketing right now, which is figuring out what's actually working, what to take action on, and how you can accidentally market yourself into a sea of sameness, which we see with a lot of builders that we work with. So I'm bringing in a guest today to talk about the buyer psychology, the consumer experience, and some of the attribution that we see in marketing and what we can do with that information. So if that sounds interesting to you, please stick around. I would love to have you, and let's get into it. Welcome to the Just Make It Pretty podcast, the marketing and mindset show for home builders and beyond. I'm your host, Sarah Haynes, and around here we go beyond pretty pictures and we get honest about what's working, what's not, and what it really takes to build better brands, better experiences, and better teams. You'll find creative ideas, practical strategies, and conversations that actually matter. I'm so glad you're here. Now let's get started. All right, everybody, here we are. I am joined today by Dusty Talbert. He is the Director of Marketing at the Providence Group. And like I said in the intro, we're going to be talking about attribution, customer behavior, branding, a bunch of different topics. And I am so excited because when we first met, we totally vibed on all these topics. And I was like, please come and talk to me about this because it's going to be so good. So thank you,
Absolutely.
Dusty, for being here. Thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
So let's start with a little bit about you. Tell me about how you found your way into the home building industry and what made you stay here.
Yeah, I would say my journey in the home building industry is a little unique. It's certainly not conventional by any stretch. I was a recent college grad. The job market at the time was not exactly favorable for myself. So, luckily, so many things you can leverage relationships with. And I had a really good college friendship. And this person reached out to me when I was in the market for an opportunity and said, "Hey, look, I'm at a good spot. Where I'm looking is where I'm working. There's an opportunity available. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yes, please sign me up." I did the whole phone interview thing, and they were very straightforward and said, "Look, we don't have a full-time opportunity available. What we do have is a 1 month contract." And I was like, "Okay, it's in marketing, yes." And they said, "It's absolutely in marketing." And I was like, "You know what? That's what I studied. That's what I wanted to get into. Worst case scenario, I take 1 month of experience and use that to find the next opportunity. Or best case scenario, I come in, prove myself a little bit, and then earn my keep as long as I possibly can." And was very fortunate to come into a spot where I did that. I was a month-to-month contractor for 6 months. At the time, there was a hiring freeze because of the state of the market. It was rough, but I think when you come in fresh and show a willingness to work and a willingness to learn, good things can happen. I wasn't the smartest person there by any stretch. I was not the sharpest tool in the shed at all. But what I did have was a really good work ethic that I had learned from my parents. And luckily that showed. So it was one of those cases where I didn't really care what level of work it was. If it needed to be done, I was going to help do it to the best of my ability. And it worked out. So after 6 months of being a contractor, they brought me on full time. And I had a beautiful 4 year career there and learned a ton.
That's awesome. And how did you end up at the Providence Group? What's your role now?
So my role now, I am the director of marketing at the Providence Group. It's a home builder that is known for an elevated product in elevated locations. So it's a builder that I've been aware of for my entire career. I used to drive by their communities on my way to work all the time and just wonder, man, I would love to be in one of their houses one day or work there and experience what that's like. And got here really through relationships. That's really how I've leveraged my career over the last 16 years and had some different stops along the way. I've been at builders that are at the national level. I've been at builders at the local level that grew to a regional size. I've been at smaller ones that did 200 homes a year and got out of home building for a small period of time to just see what other aspects of real estate was like and had some unfortunate layoff situations with the market. But again, it's one of those cases where as long as you create a good name for yourself with your work ethic and your leadership and your willingness to learn, that can go a really long way. And relationships can take you all kinds of places. So was fortunate that a place that I had worked at in the past, I had a connection here at the Providence Group, and they were looking for someone to take over the realms of the marketing side. So they got in touch. We went through a few quick rounds of interviews and been here for going on 3 years now.
I love that you said too that you were willing to outwork people and you just had a really good work ethic. I think that's so important and it's such an underrated skill, I think, in our today's age. So as you look back at your journey, what are some of the biggest lessons you learned from doing that?
Really being willing to say yes, but also learning how to say no at the same time. And the biggest one for me, I think the biggest lesson I could say I learned was how to fail forward. When you come in early and stay late, you're going to get rewarded with the work ethic to take on new things. But you also have to understand the willingness to try new things and willingness to fail to learn from that and perfect your craft along the way. I tell this story all the time, and I'll tell you the biggest example of it was early on in my career at a national home builder. I was given the keys to the email marketing platform, and it's one of those like I'm self-diagnosed OCD. So I try to be extremely careful with everything that I do. I'm very detail oriented, but the whole idea of becoming blind to something, the more you look at it, is a real thing. And I was working on sending some emails out for one specific division, and the filtering that I had set up in this system, I missed a minor detail because I just looked at it so much. So instead of the filter saying division equals, in this case, it was Dallas, Texas, the way it was set up, it was division is not equal to Dallas division. An email with a specific message and incentive and whatnot went out to everybody but the right audience. It was one of those cases where I didn't realize it, checked it 1,000 times, looked great in my eyes, sent this thing out. And it didn't take long for my phone to start ringing like crazy, and people were like, "Hey, what happened? Why is my division getting this and why am I receiving this?" And then you have a freak out mode. You go back and check and you're like, "Oh my gosh, I don't know what just happened." So a hard lesson to learn. It was also an unfortunate day because all the division presidents were in the corporate office on that particular day when it happened. So word traveled pretty fast about the mistake that was made, and it was completely my fault. There was no hiding. That that's not even the worst part of the story, to be honest with you. We ended up having to send an apology email out, just blaming it on a technical glitch, covering and saying all that kind of stuff, because that stuff can happen, we all know. And my boss at the time he gave me some good advice. Hey, just make sure that there's no typos in your email. And by him saying that, Murphy's Law is going to take over sometimes. And I double checked and triple checked everything, sent the apology email, and then also had a typo in it. So it was not a good day for Dusty at all. I ended up leaving early that day just to go hide in a corner and get away. But the good thing that came out of it was we perfected a lot of stuff in that email system as a result of that. If I, who was the guy completely in charge of the enterprise email system, can make a mistake like that, anybody else who's got their hands on that tool can make the same mistake. So what we did coming out of that was perfect all the email filters that we had for any given division, every single community in each division. So whether it was lead contacts, walk-in contacts, buyers, or homeowners, I led an initiative to really perfect those for every community we had across the country. And that was one of the biggest things that came up later that year in my annual review is that, hey, a mistake was made. There's no question about it. However, we took a negative and turned it into a positive, and things are so much better as a result of that.
Yeah, we all have stories like that. And it's everybody makes mistakes. And I do think it's really important for us as leaders to have that outlook of I don't expect you to never make mistakes. I do expect you to learn from those mistakes and be better the next time and use that to better yourself. Because yeah, we're all gonna make a mistake at some point. It's gonna happen. We're human.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure.
And especially in marketing, when I do this with logos, I get so freaked out that I'm going to misspell a word when I'm doing a logo because I've stared at this word so long. It's not a word anymore. Does not, I can't even read it. So it's, oh my God, if I misspell someone's logo, that's so embarrassing. So it definitely happens in marketing.
Yeah, for sure.
So you had talked to me a little bit about also studying consumer behavior and buyer psychology. And I'm also super fascinated by that. So, where did your love for that come from, and how do you use that today?
Yeah, so fell in love with that really in college. Once I finally got out of the undergrad studies and went into more of my major in marketing, we had a consumer behaviors class. And it was the first one, besides your marketing 101 class, that I found just particularly interesting and what it was in the buyer mindset that motivated them to purchase something over something else. So fell in love with that class, luckily performed well in it. My wife, who was my girlfriend at the time, also ended up taking that same course as an elective the following semester. And she was a management major, not a marketer whatsoever. And she had really zero interest in the class and was like, "Can you just help me take this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I love this stuff. This is perfect." So I helped her take that and get an A in that class, which is great. So yay us. But it was something about it, of just getting into the science behind consumer behavior and mindset that made them want to take action. And in the world of home building, it's the biggest purchase that someone's likely going to make in their lifetime. And it's a very emotional one. Learning throughout my career for the past 16 years of what it is that makes them want to purchase a home, whether it's lifestyle updates, lifestyle change, first time buyer, move up buyer. It's all really interesting to me as far as what makes them want to do that.
Oh, it's fascinating. And I feel like we can do so much with that information when we understand it. And we can really change everything in our marketing, our messaging. We can make sure we're really speaking to them at the time that they are in. And then also, it really just helps us understand what our next step should be. And we can give a lot of insights for our sales team and for our OSEs. And we can really bring everyone into that story and have a little bit of empathy for where they're at.
Yeah, we're taking deeper dives anytime we open a community now to figure out who the buyer profile really is. How do we
Mhm.
tailor the product to fit that buyer profile? And then what does our messaging look like to target those people?
That's so fun to me. I feel like it's like a puzzle every time, and
Yep.
I love it. I do think a lot of builders sometimes we're always moving so quickly and we will skip over that step. Or I also work with a lot of builders that don't really know who they're really selling to in a community, which it just kind of happens. It's like everyone's so focused on we need to get this out or we need to do this next promotion or whatever it is. And so we end up
Yeah.
not being as strategic as I think we could be. So I'm curious to hear, have you come across that and how do you work with that in your own organization?
We've had some cases where, I think most builders work this way, where they have a land book and they go through things and they do market studies and determine who they really think that buyer is going to be. But there are cases where the market shifts and sometimes that buyer profile completely changes. So it's having the ability to be nimble and adaptable and shift your product appropriately based on who's coming through the door really says a lot about how successful you're going to be in the marketplace. So we've had some cases where that's happened. We go in thinking one thing and things might completely change. So it's important to make sure you keep your finger on the pulse.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good point too, because I do know as a lot of builders launch their communities and then things change. If you don't adapt, then now you're just setting yourself up for failure moving forward. And I think a lot of builders also, if they don't have a good position to start with for their messaging. They don't really understand their general buyer and their self. They end up in this identity crisis and their messaging is just like all over the place. So I'd love if you could kind of talk about that as well, because I think it leads right into the community specific.
Yeah, buyers, they do a lot of research today before they ever come in your door. So they're going to engage with you, whether it's they see social media ads, paid search ads. They're digging on your website long before they ever click a form submission or maybe even bypass that whole process and come straight into the door. So making sure that your messaging is really portraying who you are as a brand and what that brand promise truly is goes a long way. And that's something that has to be there from first impression to their interaction with the sales team to even the builder and warranty and beyond. So everybody in the home buying process matters because we
Mhm.
all carry that message forward.
And if there's a disconnect, people pick up on that so fast.
They really do.
I feel like, especially when you're making promises like we're premium or we're elevated or we're luxury or whatever, and that experience does not match that message, your trust is gone.
100%. And we all know in today's world, people want to buy from people they trust from. So if you say one thing and do another, it's not a recipe for success at all.
Now, I also think that there's a hot topic in the building industry, which is incentives.
Yes.
So everybody feels like they have to have incentives. And we talked about this before and how that can actually shift the perception of your company over time. So could you talk about how you feel about incentives and what that shift looks like?
I think most builders have a love-hate relationship with them, to be honest with you. It's one of those where I think, and we've all fallen victim to it, I think, where a lot of it's led by your bigger national builders because they have the ability to lead with that. And it catches people's eye, right? You see a big dollar amount incentive and you automatically think you're getting a deal. And we all love to get deals. Like when I go shopping, I'm looking for sales all the time. I don't even buy certain things until they are on sale. So I get it. From a buyer mindset, you want to make sure that you're getting the best bang for your buck. You're getting as much out of your dollar as possible. So a lot of builders fall victim to that because others are doing it. So, all right, they're doing it and they're seeing maybe some immediate success from it. So why don't we follow suit and do the same thing? The problem is there's some unintended consequences from doing that because you're just chasing the sale, which we all want. We're in this as a for-profit business. We want to sell homes. That's our goal, right? The problem is it dilutes your brand a little bit because when you lead your messaging with an incentive, you're not leading with what sets you apart from other builders out there. Every builder has a brand promise or a niche in the market, whether it's energy efficiency, whether it's location, whether it's affordability. Everybody's got something. For us, it's all about lifestyle. We build in some of the top locations in Metro Atlanta that we're very well known for. We have an elevated product and we provide an elevated lifestyle because there's HOA maintained landscaping and exterior maintenance everywhere. So you don't have to worry about taking care of your lawn. You can live your life the way that you want to. We're all busy. Several of us, I've got 3 kids. They're playing sports, they're doing things. We're never home on a weekend. We're always gone, but I still got to figure out how to mow my lawn or I got to pay someone else to do it. And it's one of those things that it's just for us. We take care of that. It's out of sight, out of mind. You don't have to worry about it anymore. And long after we close a community, you can drive through and it looks pristine. And that's one of those things that sets us apart. So we
Yeah.
have to make sure that we pay that message off by leading with that. And then the incentive really just becomes a tool in the tool shed of if they're still on the fence, you can use that to help them make a decision, but don't lead with it because then what you're really doing is you're opening the door to further negotiations and you're really letting them know that we're very open to negotiations and the price really isn't what it says it is.
So I was working with a builder a few years back and they had that exact problem where I what ended up happening was that they priced their homes too high when they launched and they ended up offering massive incentives. And I think Jeff Shore calls that price apology or something like that. It was huge incentives. And because that number became such a big thing and they really pushed that as please just buy in this community, all of the other everything else that made that community great was just so pushed down, and they had so many more people that were shopping them and wanting a good deal and be like, well, if you're giving this much off, what else can I get?
Exactly.
And it turned into quite a conundrum for them because they really had to dig themselves out of that, and it was really hard when they ran that incentive for so long and the pricing was just not right from the beginning, and they really had an uphill battle.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate too. Kevin Oakley at Do Convert did a really phenomenal job of explaining this. I think it was back in December about even just the way your homes are discoverable through online searches. If you're priced at a certain price point, but then you have an incentive on top of that, if you just applied that incentive towards your price and price it to the market, you can put yourself in a completely different price category where you're now going to be discoverable when in the first case you probably wouldn't be. Putting yourself in a position to price to market is going to be critical for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, that's an interesting addition too, because you're right. The SEO and build any of your ads and things like that can all affect that as well. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about ads and how we do that. You had said when we were talking that you're a very revenue focused marketing person. So tell me what that means to you.
For me, it's really looking about, as a marketer, my primary job function is to drive quality traffic, whether that's to the website and ultimately to our communities. And that means traffic that converts to contracts and sales. So if I'm not doing that, I'm not working here and you're going to have to find somebody else. But I want to be that guy, right? So finding the traffic that converts to contracts is critical. So you have to have data to support that. So for us, getting the attribution lined up as closely to perfect as we can is critical. That way, we're not wasting any marketing dollars on avenues that don't work, and we're focusing the majority of that money where it does work.
Yeah. So I think there's two sides to that because you definitely want any kind of paid advertising that you're doing to have an attribution so that you know what's working, like you said. And then there's also the other side of it where you have branding efforts and longer term marketing efforts that aren't as easily attributable. So, how do you explain that to your team and how do you work with those two strategies happening at the both at the same time?
Yeah, it's tough because not everyone understands marketing. So you have to do your due diligence in explaining that to everybody in the company that the buyer funnel it's a long one. Especially the home buying process is a longer cycle right now. So you've got to do some of those branding things to catch people who are in that awareness part of the sales funnel just to get your name out there. And those are going to be things that just take a little bit longer, but they start the process to move them further down and making sure that you're at least spending money there because you have to. Everything ultimately works together. So we can't just say our sales traffic report said that everybody came from just Zillow. So we're going to spend every bit of marketing dollars on that avenue and forget everything else because it doesn't matter. If you do that, it's not going to pay off for you. So you have to do a little bit of everything because you just have to keep your finger on the pulse of all those activities. So you're looking at things like impressions and time on site, things like that. And those are what I would call vanity metrics. You don't want to put too much stock in those, but it is a good way to keep a finger on the pulse of is there still interest out there? Are people still coming to our website? Are they still spending time on the website? Or are they just getting there from an ad and spending 15 seconds and then bouncing? Because that's not really a quality visit to your site, right? So checking on all those things is really important. But then there's other things where you get to your listing sites and your syndication, and you can make sure that all of your stuff is as buttoned up as possible. But is it doing the job of getting people through the door? That's the critical checkpoint there. So they may see us there, they may not. Hopefully they do, and hopefully they act on it. But it's one of those cases where we try to do our best to stay in touch with our sales team to make sure that they're fully aware of all the different ways people can find us and come into their communities and making sure that they're incorporating that into their conversation with prospects so that we can get as much reliable data as possible to then present to everyone and explain any budgetary decisions we decide to make.
I feel like the organic marketing side and the longer term branding efforts and things like that are harder for people that are looking for that immediate ROI to understand. And I don't think there's any real way around that in terms of if you just ignore it, that's going to really push you in the same mindset as the incentive conversation we just had. It's now you're not putting effort into those things. So now you're only relying on, I have to pay for every single lead, or I have to offer these incentives, or now your cost per lead goes up, I think, when you're not
Yeah,
marrying the two together.
absolutely.
So why do you think that attribution is such a difficult challenge in home building? Because I feel like we have some really specific things that make it harder than maybe some other industries.
It's tough. Again, I think it goes back to the fact that the buying cycle is longer when you're buying such something a big purchase. A home purchase is the biggest one you're going to make again. So People are going to do their research. They'll experience your brand for months before they ever pull the trigger. So it's hard to track where they initially see you, whether that's if you do any TV or connected TV ads or radio ads or social, whatever. They're all out there. So being able to track it is a bit of a challenge because the way most models are set up is on last click attribution. So you don't see what started the process, but you're seeing what finished and what got them to convert on a web form, but that doesn't tell you the full story. And that's really the hard part. And to couple that with our unique experience, I tell people this all the time. We're a little weird. We get so much more physical traffic in the door than we do online lead forms. You can do as a lot with anything digital. You can use tools like Zapier to have Zap connections to your CRM systems and get a pretty good idea of where they finally converted. But again, it doesn't tell you the full story. And then when you're having much more physical traffic come through the door that never filled out a lead form, you're heavily reliant on the sales team capturing where that person found you. But if they're not
Mhm.
incorporating it properly into their conversation, you may not be really getting very good data. And
Yeah.
you have to make sure that your sales team, because of the reliance there, that they're fully educated on all the different ways we are currently advertising. There may be something that we did 6 months ago, 12 months ago that we're not doing anymore, but if we haven't communicated that, they could still be picking that as an option in the CRM system by mistake. And we can then find out that's great, but that's not accurate information anymore. The old classic story is everyone says they come in from signs and signage because that's like the last thing that they see before they come in your sales center. And I've had multiple cases at different builders where that was the number one traffic driver. And I was like, we're gonna do some tests to figure out why that's the case. And of course, the first time we tested it, it was because it was the very first thing listed on the registration form. And they were like, oh, cool, signs, just check it off, go. I don't really care. And then when we finally had some heart-to-heart conversations with them, we're like, do you really want us to just put every ounce of our budget into just that? And
Mhm.
then there's like, oh, no, I don't want that at all. We're like, that's the result of what you're giving me. So
Mhm.
we moved things around, and then lo and behold, signs weren't really picked that much anymore. So we've started that same process here with our sales team and letting them know here's the data we're tracking. Here's what we're seeing as a result of the data we have available today. But here's where we want to get to, and here's why. You all rely on us to drive quality traffic. We also rely on you to give us quality data so that we can do that. So it's a codependent relationship. We all know that in this world, we're driven by sales. Sales leads everything in home building, but every department, whether it's marketing, whether it's the construction side, purchasing, we all support sales and we all need each other to do our jobs effectively.
That communication, I think, is something that's difficult for a lot of marketers. And we have to almost sell marketing to our sales team a lot of times, is how it feels.
Yeah,
But I think that skill is something that all marketers can work on, being able to communicate what you're doing, what's important to you, how you use it, and why that matters to your salesperson. And being able to build those relationships between departments, I think, is something that all home builders, if you're not focusing on that, if your leaders aren't focusing on that, you're missing out.
100%.
So I love to give tactical tips in all of my episodes. So what are some signs or red flags that you feel like builders should be looking for that maybe will help them identify if they're measuring the wrong things or if the attribution's not accurate or anything like that?
I would look at a few different things. One, check your lead to walk-in ratio to figure out if there's things you can automate, you're probably going to be in pretty good shape, but it doesn't mean it's necessarily true. If in our case, we had some cases where every lead come through the system said website, but we know that they're getting there from a different vehicle. So when things are very lump-sided, take a second look at it because it might not be telling you the right information. And from there, it's really making sure that you look at really the details as far as what does your traffic look like week to week. We try to look at that consistently. We look at it daily. We also pull reports weekly to see your week over week, your month over month trends, and then look at, are you priced appropriately? Are you getting the right people to the door? If you're getting a lot of people coming in, but you're not getting contracts, it's either a blend of you're not driving the right traffic or you may not have the right product at the right price to get people over the finish line. So those are some things that you can certainly look at. And then making sure that your messaging is aligned with who you are as a brand. Are you really who you say you are? Are you leading with the wrong things, or are you leading with what your brand promise truly says it is?
That's really good advice. I think one for me is also to ask questions, especially if you have a vendor or even someone in-house that's running advertising or doing your marketing. Ask them questions so that you fully understand the goals. I see so often builders that come to me and they're like, I don't know why our ads aren't working and we're getting zero leads from them. And their campaigns are set up for views only, or they're not set up for the same goals that this person's here telling me this is the goal of the advertising, but it's no, that's not what you're actually doing. So ask questions, get clarity, be curious about your marketing efforts. I think that would
Yeah.
help a lot of people.
It really does. Having the right partners that allow you to ask those questions and keep
Mhm.
an ability of being nimble in what you're doing goes a really long way. We've been fortunate to have several people that have helped in that regard, and they're always trying to bring new ideas to the table. Any given month, you might have a community that's either performing or not, and those can shift month to month. And so your priorities might shift as a result of that to try to get the right people in the door at one community or another, and trying to figure out what other builders might be successful in doing is a great way to find out something that you can test that might be new. And leveraging relationships across the industry is a big part of that as well. Luckily, over the past 16 years, I've met a lot of good people and we stay in touch all the time. But there's a group of 10 of us that meets every so often and we bounce ideas off each other. Hey, this is what my cost per lead looks like, or this is what my cost per visit looks like. Is that what you guys are seeing? Is it way too high? Is it too low? Is that a good thing? Am I tracking the right stuff? Having people you can bounce off ideas like that it's so valuable.
Yeah, networking is so underrated. It's so important.
It really is.
So my last question. So if you were to give advice to a builder that realized that they're not really standing out in the market, what would you tell them as the first thing that you should do to start standing out against other builders that are building right down the street?
I would take a look at two things, really. I would look first at your website to make sure that it's something that you're proud of and something that you think has a very clear objective in the buyer journey. If it's too difficult to find what you're looking for, that's a problem. And I would also couple that with, I think right now social media is really undervalued. It's one of those places where people spend so much time. It self-admittedly, I will sit at night and doom scroll way too long. I'm working on that. It's a personal problem of mine, but many of us share that. People, whether they want to spend time on Zillow just looking at pretty houses, they do the same thing looking at social media, whether it's really good photos or just simple reels. I think that's an area where people feel like it might be a lot to bite off. But if you do it the right way and just let your content do the work for you in your products, people will engage. So I think those are two areas really of low-hanging fruit where you can make some very meaningful changes that pay off in the end.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I'm right there with you, scrolling every night on my phone. Thank you so much for being here and sharing all of your insights today. You have just been a wealth of knowledge. So if there has been anybody out there, our listeners that would like to connect with you, what would be the best place for them to do that?
They could find me. My personal email is really easy. It's my first name dot last name. So dusty.talbert@gmail.com. My email at work is dtalbert at theprovidencegroup.com. You can also find me on LinkedIn as well. So I'm pretty easy to find if you're looking for me.
Sounds good. I will put all those links down in the description box. So if you guys have any questions or comments, you can do that right here on this episode, comment below, or click those links and speak right to Dusty. Me and Dusty both. We'd love to talk with you and chat about our topics today. I'm really passionate about all these things, and I see it in builders that I work with every single day. So if you have anything that you would like to know or comments, the interaction doesn't just help my algorithm, it also, we can help you. Go right ahead and do that. Give the episode a like. And thank you, Dusty, for spending some time with me on this Friday. It was really fun.
Yeah, thank you. Had a great time.
Awesome. Everyone, I will see you in the next episode with a new guest. So please come back on next week and we will see you there. Have a good rest of your day. Bye.